Well, it's another beautiful day, and I'm quite glad actually that YouTube doesn't do smell for you, because the farmers around here have been spreading muck on the fields recently, and it's still in the air and it's quite pungent. So glad that you're not getting that. I'm quite weird and a country boy, so I kind of enjoy the smell. But anyway, it was making me think about growth, really. That this time that we are in currently in autumn in the UK is the time when farmers are planting their crops for the next year. Hence why they're starting to put muck on the fields and fertilising them, giving those growing crops the nutrition they need to get off to a good start. And it made me consider that the seasons that we go through in life, often we have times of growth and times where we are just waiting for the next season, waiting for the sun to come, for the rain to do its thing and to nourish us to grow. There may be a period of time that we go through, like autumn in the UK, where growth is pretty slow for us, like it is for the crops, and it's approaching winter, they're just getting their roots down, and sometimes there's quite a lot of muck that gets put on top of them at this point in their growth cycle. And I find that often happens to us as well. We start something new, perhaps a new hobby or a new business venture, and suddenly life just decides to throw some muck at us. But I think that muck is intended to help us grow, rather than just to smell and be horrible. We have to sometimes go through those breakdowns, those breakups. Sometimes even the breakthroughs can be quite messy and painful in our life. But they're necessary for our growth, for our next steps. And I found a few different things that kind of help me to put this all into perspective. We live in a pretty ridiculous world, in a pretty ridiculous universe. We are living on a tiny speck of dust, travelling through space at millions of miles per hour, and the nearest star to us is light years away. We haven't even broken how to travel at like 0.001% of light speed yet, and yet the nearest star to us is millions of miles away, but a few light years away. And then that's just our nearest star. There are then millions of stars in our galaxy and billions of galaxies. The size and scope of the universe just blows our minds when we think about it. And quite like that crop, really, that's taken the muck to grow. We're just planted in this huge field that there's billions of other humans around us, and then there are loads of other fields around it as well. It goes on and on and on and on, and it can feel quite overwhelming. Like we're just this tiny little speck in nothingness, but actually we're really, really key, because our growth supports the growth of everything around us too. As we grow taller, as we put on the successes and the strength that it takes to survive in this world, we can start to kind of, I suppose, help the crop around us as well, in that we may provide a bit of shade for someone who hasn't quite got as far as we have yet, or we might be able to shelter someone from the rains, and we're part of an ecosystem at the end of the day. And there are a few pointers, I suppose, that have really helped me to just grasp the weight of that, and also to try and comprehend the vastness and infiniteness of this life and of the universe that we live in. And the first of those is just to be grateful that we're alive, to Be grateful for the things that we have. I think a lot of us, myself included, I've spent far too much time in my life dwelling on the past or worrying about the future. And by just being grateful for what we have, whether that's the roof over our heads, the food in our mouths, running water in our homes, a flushing toilet, things that 100 years ago would have been incredible to the people that lived then, but are just normal to us now. And often I think we forget that. So yeah, just be grateful for the things you have in life. It doesn't matter how simple or how minor they may seem. The fact that you are alive is something in itself to be grateful for. And secondly is to try and be present. Again, it links back to that point on, we spend a lot of time worrying about the future and dwelling on, what's going to happen, how's it all going to turn out. And there are also times when we can get stuck in the past and we're, regretting things perhaps, or wishing we'd done things differently, made different choices. But there is no such thing really as the past or the future. All that we have is this present moment, this now. And, the things that have happened in the past have happened. And if we try and go back and live there, it's really not very healthy for our mental state, our spiritual state, quite often our physical state as well, actually. And also true of that is trying to live in the future, constantly striving, constantly onto the next thing, the next worry, the next, perhaps even just the next thing you want to buy. It's that living away from the centeredness and the presence that we can find in the moment, in the now, in the present, that can really lead us into some pretty negative thought spirals, some negative thought patterns that can quickly run away from us if we're not careful. So that's my second tip, is to try and really just find some time in your day to remain present, to come back into the present moment and just look and be grateful for the things around you. And then finally, my last and probably my most important tip is surrender, or letting go. And this for me was probably the one that took the longest to learn. But as I alluded to when I was talking about this, the ridiculous size and scope of the universe, and that we may feel like a tiny little plant in a very huge field, and that's okay, because we are that. We are a very, very small speck in a very, very enormous universe. But that doesn't make us any less important to God, and it doesn't make us any less valuable. I think that when we shift our mindset into one of letting go, of surrender, of realizing that this existence really is temporary, and it's a passing through of life, it helps us to just shed some of those thoughts of the past or worries of the future, because we realise that all we have is the now, and that everything around us, everything that's happening to us, is happening for a reason. There is a higher and divine power behind all that is going on in our lives, in the world, in the universe, and we must trust that plan that is so much larger than us and so much grander than we could ever imagine. We must trust that has our best intentions at heart, and that we will go through periods of growth. We will go through periods of having muck spread on us, but ultimately it's part of that process and that plan to help us grow into the healthiest and the best crop that we could possibly be. So if you're interested in kind of learning a bit more about how I approach this, how I set up systems in my life to help me be grateful and present, and to hand things over to God, You know, whether that's my physical health, and my mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, financial health, even, are all things that I've come to learn that these core ideals and these core attitudes towards life are really, really important in stepping into that cycle of building habits and building a path forward that works for you, and that looks after you and looks after the people around you too. So as I say, if that sounds of interest to you, then there's a link to an ebook that I've written in the description below that will guide you through step by step the exact process that I use to basically just keep my life in a good alignment and in a good path for both growth and also just a daily health check, I suppose. It keeps me nice and on track. So I hope that will be of value to you as well, and that you've enjoyed today's video. I look forward to catching you in the next one. Take care. God bless.